Hello and welcome to another chat. Followers of this channel will know that on the 23rd of December, a Russian ship sank in the Mediterranean. The Ursa Major was well known for weapons transfers. The circumstances still being established. You could say that's definitely suspicious. What's interesting is in the last couple of days, a Russian ship has been observed operating over top of where that ship sank. It's investigating the wreck, basically. That ship is Yantar, quite a special, unique vessel. Really interesting. I'll talk a lot more about why it's so interesting, what it's capable of. In case you wondered, the photograph is taken over the wing of a Atlantic 2 maritime patrol aircraft, the French Navy, sadly not shooting a missile like this image. Let's talk about why the Yantar is operating over the wreck of Ursa Major. I am H.I. Sutton. I specialize in unconventional naval warfare. I'm a defense analyst. I'm not really a YouTuber. I don't have all the equipment. This is unscripted and unedited. I've got a lot of comments recently about the audio quality. Apologies. A lot of people suggesting they could chip in to buy me a better microphone. What I'd ask, if you are seriously thinking of doing that, thank you, but no thanks. Please consider giving that money to charity instead. Okay, let's get on with it. The Ursa Major sank in the Mediterranean on the western side, not far from the Straits of Gibraltar, quite close to the North African coast. The water there is very deep, at least 2,500 meters, 8,200 feet. That will affect which ships can investigate the wreck and do anything about it. This story, I'm relying on obviously my background knowledge on the vessel and the circumstances, but especially the sources. Roxford Maritime reported it on Twitter and also on Blue Sky, and has a Substack, James Droxford at Substack. Check that out. Also, Naval News reported this news, and now other media, of course, are reporting it. So Ursa Major is an interesting ship. As we know, as we're learning, logistic ships are a big part of naval warfare, both in peacetime and for warfare in war. This ship was involved in the Black Sea, the Tartus Express, all those sorts of things. It's known for carrying special payloads for the Russian government. On this occasion, it was carrying two large cranes. I think they're originally German made. Reportedly, these were destined for Vladivostok, but I've speculated the feeling in defense community is that we're expecting them to go to Tobruk in Libya as the most likely destination. But there's also two hatches for a nuclear powered icebreaker that's being constructed. They almost certainly were heading to Vladivostok, and they are quite valuable. They're very hard to build, and losing them will significantly delay that icebreaker again. On the 23rd of December, there were three explosions in the engine room reported. Apparently, some of the explosions were from the outside in, so it suggests sabotage. The Russians have described it as a terrorist attack. They haven't said who, but they tend to use that language when they're blaming Ukraine for stuff. Ukraine hasn't said anything, but it appears at least possible. We can speculate that Ukrainian intelligence, HUR, were involved, unconfirmed. Either way, Russia is now investigating it with Yantar. Yantar is pretty infamous, very interesting ship. Here's Yantar in Algeria. She had deployed to the Mediterranean in November, so she was already there ahead of these events. Because Tartus is closed, she hasn't been able to call there. She did hang around outside Tartus for a while, but she's instead called in Algeria twice and Egypt once, at least. Most recently, a few days ago, she was in Algiers. I would speculate that she was picking up important crew members and or important equipment. Someone has been able to track down that very important guy in the GUGI organization, I'll talk about in the next slide, turned up in Algiers. Now, he would not normally be with Yantar. He's not just part of the crew. It's very special for him to be there. Putting two and two together, he's there because of the Ursa Major sinking. So it's a pretty important mission that she's going on. He is the commander of the submarine squadron, or brigade, they call it, that supports GUGI. GUGI is a unique organization within the Russian Navy, Russian defense, reports directly to the head of Navy. It is the main directorate of the deep sea research. That's a euphemism. It's not research as we understand it, it's spying, basically. And there isn't anyone serious, at least in Russia or the West, who would view this as a true research organization. They do some research, I'm sure, but they're primarily to support the military, the Navy, with deep sea engineering. They're based in the Arctic, Kola Peninsula. They've got a secret submarine base. That big submarine there, that's one of theirs. It's a mothership, so smaller submarines. The largest submarines in the world are not missile submarines. They're not attack submarines. They're the spy submarines operated by GUGI for the Russians. This is another shot of their secret base. I think this photograph comes from the 90s when they're a little bit more open, but this is incredibly secretive location. They have beluga whales, things like that there as well. But in about 2012 to 15, they launched a new ship that changed the way they operated a little bit. Yantar, we don't know for sure, but I would speculate was intended to conduct the seabed operations that didn't require the extreme stealth of the submarines, and it could do it much cheaper. This also coincides with a time when internet cables, communication cables, undersea pipelines were becoming more and more important. So there's more and more infrastructure on the seabed. Yantar recently has become more secretive, however. This is a sketch I did of her. If we zoom in, we can see some of the details. Start with something fundamental that often gets overlooked. This vessel is designed to hover over a specific location. To do that, it has steerable screws or props at the back and a couple of bow thrusters. This is not a normal configuration for your average ship. Also has a large dome. We describe it as a spy ship. That's not for listening in. That's likely a satellite communication. So it can sail anywhere on Earth and still keep a decent communication back to the Kremlin, back to Alenia Guba. In terms of the equipment to actually conduct the mission, it's got two submersibles it can use. They're essentially the same, but slightly different designs. They're both three person. They can dive incredibly deep to 6,000 meters, 20,000 feet. That's deep enough to go anywhere on Earth. And they have dived to those sorts of depths. It's housed in a special hangar with a turntable so it can be spun round. It's got a special floor that can lift it in and out of the water. It's very James Bond. The vessel can also carry some Western supplied ARS 600 deep diving vessels. These are sort of like one or two person submarines. They've got one of each, actually, one that's a single person, one that's two person. They were supplied before sanctions, so on their dual use. Supposedly, Russia is using them for submarine rescue, but it's pretty obvious that they can be used for a lot more than that. They can only dive to about 600 meters, maybe 1,000 meters in test. That's too shallow for this particular mission, so I wouldn't expect to see them being used. What I do think will be used, the first things in the water are likely to be deep sea robots, remote operated vehicles. These have the hydrodynamics of a brick. They're basically for going up and down. They're on a tether, an umbilical cord, if you like. Yantar has several A-frames at the back. It can drop them over, and it uses both Russian-made and Western-supplied ones. Again, the Western ones were supplied before the sanctions, back when the West was somewhat friendly with, or got better terms with Russia. And again, uses like submarine rescue are justified the purchase. So what does it mean? Well, I think obviously Yantar is going to locate and survey and probably mark the wreck, record where it is, maybe even put a beacon to make it easier to find, that sort of thing. They'll investigate why she sunk, with the holes, corroborate the sailors' reports, make sure that the crew are not telling fibs, that sort of thing. And they'd like to assess the feasibility of salvage. We don't know whether they particularly want to salvage things. You would imagine that they would want to salvage those hatches. Have the hatches slid off? Are they, a mile away from the rest of the wreck or not? That sort of information. And they might retrieve and destroy cryptographic or other sensitive equipment from them. A couple of obvious questions, though. Firstly, was Russia the first to get to the wreck? Has someone else beaten them to it? We don't know. What happens undersea stays undersea. The second is around her cargo. We know about the cranes. We know about the hatches. Was she carrying anything else that was of particular importance? Okay, that's this update. I've still got to do the video on deception and camouflage. Please like, subscribe. Thank you very much.